Hello and welcome. I am Chuck Bejan, and this is my presentation on the ENISA Threat Landscape Report 2018. First, we need to learn a little about the pedigree of the report. ENISA is the EU Agency for Network and Information Security. This report was produced by an EU agency and is primarily directed at an EU audience. This report is issued annually. This presentation covers the 2018 version of the report, which was released in January 2019 and presents data and trends from 2018. The report is divided into several sections. It begins with a discussion of cyber threat intelligence, or CTI. It reviews recent developments in CTI and identifies emerging CTI issues. It then presents the top cyber threats. The report identifies 15 such cyber threats. For each of these 15, the threat is defined, salient points of interest and current trends are discussed. Major occurrences of the threat during the reporting period and the attack vectors used to realize that threat are presented. The report recommends specific actions to be taken to mitigate the threat and indicates the position of the threat in the cyber kill chain. The sections for each individual cyber threat conclude with a list of references used. The report presents the current state of play in CTI. CTI practices, training, and tools are all seen as improving since the last annual report. Open source CTI collection is seen as being pretty good, while CTI information sharing between organizations is rated as good. The availability and affordability of CTI training is adequate, although additional effort may be required for CTI training of non-technical individuals. CTI best practices are becoming a reality. CTI-related frameworks, such as MITRE's ATT&CK framework, is an example of this. Another positive factor is the availability of tools to support CTI collection, correlation, and dissemination. These include both commercial and open source tools. That's the good news. There are also some areas for improvement. Collection of CTI is one thing, but the cyber community needs to improve its practices for sharing that CTI. The report highlights the sharing of CTI in emergency response situations as a concern. Legal considerations are also a concern. The laws pertaining to the collection of CTI vary from nation to nation. In some jurisdictions, collecting such intelligence is a crime. This necessarily limits the ability of the cyber defense community to identify cyber threats and apply countermeasures in a timely manner. Organizations also need to do a better job of identifying what needs to be protected. What are the organization's most important assets? Where should limited cyber defense resources be employed in order to defend those assets? CTI is agile and must change more rapidly than traditional enterprise risk management. Keeping those two in sync presents a challenge. The relevant CTI stakeholders must be identified and integrated into the CTI cycle. To be useful, CTI has to get to the right people in the organization and get to all of the right people. Businesses need to improve the integration of CTI into their overall business strategy. CTI strategy will need to be tailored for each particular type of business. The presentation of CTI needs to be made more understandable to non-technical audiences. Towards this end, ENISA released a tool called Open CSAM, which continuously monitors cybersecurity news and highlights trending reports. CTI workforce skill profiles also need to be defined. Different skill sets will be required as an organization progresses through different levels of CTI capability. CTI needs to be integrated with traditional intelligence. Both disciplines stand to gain from the synergies achieved. This point becomes more important as nation-state actors increase their role in cyber operations. The report proceeds to recommend increased European engagement in the following areas: the creation of indigenous raw data repositories to break European dependence on involvement from U.S. firms, development of EU CTI capabilities which are independent of non-EU sources, the creation of a CTI capability and maturity model, development of CTI skill profiles and mapping those to the CTI capability and maturity model, or CMM. This mapping would be used to drive the direction of the deployment of a CTI educational curriculum. This capability further supports the goal of making the EU independent of foreign nations for its CTI capabilities. Finally, a creation of a CTI culture, which means organizing EU practitioners into a community to promote the sharing of information and best practices. The report advocates constructing a cyber threat intelligence program and a CTI capability maturity model, which can be used to assess the maturity of the organization's CTI program. The CTI program encompasses multiple stakeholders, functional areas, and processes, as shown on this slide. The CTI maturity model establishes metrics for rating the maturity of different CTI capabilities. It provides a snapshot of the state of play of an organization's CTI program. It is analogous to the software capability maturity model for evaluating software development processes and is employed in a similar fashion. CTI capabilities are rated by 4 levels. These are initial, meaning indicating informal processes, managed, which indicates that a formal CTI process exists, repeatable, which indicates that the outputs of CTI processes are aligned with organizational goals, and optimized, which indicates mature CTI processes which undergo continuous improvement. CTI capabilities are grouped into 5 phases. Planning, where the type of data to be collected and the means of collection are identified. Collection, where the data is actually collected, categorized, and stored. Analysis and production, this is where the collected data is analyzed to produce CTI. Where the CTI products are distributed to relevant stakeholders. And evaluation, where the stakeholders quantitatively and qualitatively evaluate the CTI program. CTI products can be divided into 4 groupings: strategic, operational, technical, and tactical. Each CTI grouping can be evaluated against 5 qualitative metrics as shown in this table. We now switch our focus to the top 15 cyber threat categories. You can see the rankings on this slide. In compiling this list, data breaches and identity theft differ from typical cyber threats in that they are not threats in themselves, but rather the consequences of successful threats. Some of the threats fall into the same threat category. For example, ransomware is a type of malware. Cyber espionage is included as a threat type, but is actually more of a motive than a cyber threat. Meanwhile, the use of botnets and exploit kits has declined. The position of a given threat in the list is indicative of the number of incidents, their impact, and the role played by that threat in the larger CTI landscape. The report identified progress in countering threat agents. Some areas of progress were increased understanding of the attacker's perspective. This includes understanding attacker motives, TTPs, and modes of operation. Penetration of the threat agent infrastructure. Using false persona, some defenders have been successful in penetrating the threat agent subculture. There have also been changes in the threat agents themselves. These include the repositioning of state-sponsored actors in response to changing geopolitical objectives, a shift towards fileless attacks delivered via impersonation attacks or email. Threat agents are increasing their discovery of vulnerabilities. Threat agents are also introducing new methods of evading attribution and detection. threat agents are also increasing their capability to attack the cyber supply chain by introducing malicious code and/or hardware prior to the final point of assembly. The report presents 5 types of threat agents and their motives. These are cyber criminals, whose main motive is profit; nation states, whose motives are cyber espionage and also the attainment of geopolitical objectives; hacktivists, who are motivated by support of a political cause; cyber terrorists, who are also political actors; and script kiddies, who are primarily motivated by the technical challenge of executing a successful attack. This table maps threat agents against their primary and secondary cyber threats. Notice that corporations are also included in the table, not because they are threat actors, but to show the primary and secondary cyber threats which impact them. Several attack vectors exist. These fall into general categories, such as attacking the human element. These include social engineering, phishing and its variants, business email compromise, spam, compromise through social media online services, customer tech support scams, phone scams, and SMS scams. Web and browser-based category. These include drive-by downloads, drive-by crypto mining, malicious scripts or URLs, web application attacks, such as SQL injection, browser-based attacks, watering hole attacks, etc. Internet exposed assets category. These include attacks on unprotected internet-facing assets or the use of default or weak service credentials and password reuse. Exploitation of vulnerabilities or misconfigurations or flaws in cryptographic, network, or security protocols. Supply chain attacks, as we've mentioned previously, Huawei being a prime example. Network lateral movement. Active network attacks, such as DNS hijacking. Privilege escalation. Fileless or memory-based attacks, including malicious PowerShell or XSL scripts. And in the final category of misinformation or disinformation, which includes online trolling, illegitimate use of social bots, and distribution of fake news. The report presents its conclusions in 3 areas: those relating to policy matters for EU members and organizations, those relating to businesses, and those relating to technical research or educational issues. EU member states and organizations are called upon to invest in CTI infrastructure. This not only means technical assets, but also human assets. Key to this effort will be the facilitation of CTI skills training. EU members are also asked to remove barriers to sharing CTI knowledge between organizations. This includes creating CTI knowledge centers to facilitate sharing of knowledge and clearly delineating areas of CTI responsibility for different organizations. This knowledge needs to be presented in a format that is understandable to non-technical users. Finally, emerging threats must be taken into account when CTI policy decisions are being taken. For EU businesses, the report recommends developing CTI services for a wide range of enterprises. There is no one-size-fits-all application for CTI. Businesses should also define processes for CTI knowledge management and responding to automated cyber attacks. Businesses are encouraged to estimate the impact of potential cyber attacks and build that into their risk management strategy. They should also maintain a vigilant stance toward ensuring the security of their supply chain. The report concludes by offering a set of technical, research, and educational recommendations. It advocates development of threat assessments by sector, the development of new attack disruption methods, and creation of a common vocabulary for CTI terms. It also encourages vulnerability management practices, the merging of CTI incident reporting with CTI processing. Finally, it advocates the combination of CTI with other intelligence-related disciplines.